This is the Leadership in Insurance podcast, brought to you by FinPro Search Partners.
Insurance companies are businesses and they need to look for the long term and be sustainable.
We went from 0 to 1 and now it's going from 1 to 100.
Insurance as a concept, as a kind of service, is brilliant. The execution is what we're looking at now.
I think the companies that are going to succeed are the ones that are going to understand and master the art of intent.
When we talk about innovation, we lean too heavily to think about technology and we don't think about creating a culture of innovation.
I think innovation is essentially continuous improvement of existing processes and platforms and product.
Right? It's got to be easy. It's got to be seamless.
Good afternoon and welcome to the Emerging Tech series of the Leadership in Insurance podcast. I'm your host, Gavin Savage, and this is the podcast where we speak to technology founders, executives and leaders from the world of insurance and InsurTech. Today, I'm very lucky to be joined by Patrick, who is the co-founder and CTO of When Insurance. Patrick, welcome. How are you doing?
Thanks. I'm doing great, Gavin. How are you?
Yeah. All good. Glad we got this one in. It's been a quick turnaround fairly quick from our initial conversation. And yeah, super excited to chat to you and hear more about the When Insurance business.
Awesome. Yeah, definitely glad to be here talking about it.
So a great place to start. You've got a very traditional, I would say, background into kind of technology, software engineering, but it'd be great if you could just give us a summary of that journey that you've been on, how you got, into technology for a start, and then how you ended up in the world of InsurTech.
Yeah, it's definitely been a bit of a journey. Getting into technology actually started back in junior high. I taught myself HTML back in the days before there was JavaScript frameworks and CSS. So from there, just kept learning new different technologies and never really went to college beyond 2 quarters. Ended up going to a startup and this will be my 4th startup here. So never thought I'd end up in insurance though. It was always focused on technology and other solutions. But when I heard about this product, I was like, there's no reason for me not to go try and build this.
Nice. And probably for the listeners, it definitely makes sense. Do you want to explain about the current startup you're involved in, When Insurance? Explain a little bit more about the business and what the mission is.
Yeah, so the mission for When is we are trying to revolutionize offboarding. It's kind of the forgotten stepchild of the employee experience. There's a ton of technology around onboarding, open enrollment, and training people while they're employed, but there's really nothing there for people post-employment. HR teams traditionally might use Monday.com to keep track of checklists, or they might have a spreadsheet, but it's really a disorganized system for HR teams. Then for the employee being let go, you're stuck with this 16, 20-page PDF file that sends you 20 different places and no one ever reads them. So in the idea of kind of solving the offboarding problem as well as the health insurance gap post-employment came up, it was a great thing that I wanted to jump on. And I had actually lost my job during COVID. And that's kind of what triggered this, where the co-founder, Andy Hamilton, actually his neighbor, Dan Wertheimer, had the idea about 10 years ago, but never did anything with it. And then during COVID, Andy and I were both employed at Expedia after our last startup was acquired there. So we both lost our jobs during COVID. Dan brought this idea up again. And Andy was like, well, this makes a lot more sense having gone through that exit process and understanding what it actually looks like.
Nice. And just kind of touching on that experience, you kind of said, you got made redundant and, this had been probably answers my question, but that experience was ultimately the main, leading idea or the leading reason why you both started When, or had it been something that you'd always felt had been a problem that needed to be solved? I'm always interested in the why this was the problem that you decided to jump into a startup and take that very risky move.
Yeah, it was definitely not something I ever thought of prior to this. Like I've been let go before, like gone through going onto Cobra and experienced all of that, but was never like privy to the fact that there's really no technology around it on the HR side. And then especially like at this point, like everyone that got let go during COVID, they got emails. Some of them were locked out of their computers, so they couldn't even read the email. And it was just a very terrible, disjointed process for everyone involved.
Hmm.
So having seen that and experienced it during COVID, it really triggered that why is there no technology solution here question, which is great for insurance startups and tech startups.
Hmm. And why do you think it is the case? Why is no one? Is it such a it's a thing that happens a lot, you
It
know?
happens a lot, but a lot of companies' mindsets are why should I invest money and resources into people leaving my company? Which
Hmm.
fair statement, but the resources and technology there is not that expensive. So to be able to give a fully baked solution to a company is just not something startups have traditionally gone towards. But especially like with all the headlines with the tech layoffs and how that all happened, I think companies are realizing very quickly that you have a huge reputation risk as well as like a legal and compliance risk every time you do large layoffs and even day-to-day layoffs and terminations.
Hmm. Yeah. And you launched your the business launched the product in July. Is that correct?
Yeah. So we've got a few products. The insurance product launched in July, and
Yeah.
then our initial kind of AI-driven health insurance marketplace launched back in April.
Hmm.
And then beginning of the month here, we launched our full offboarding tool. So that's allowing HR teams to manage their exit documentation, their workflows, and their severance packages, all in like a standardized format.
Right. And what's the journey been like, as CTO, obviously I'd imagine you're quite hands-on at the moment, but also very much on both sides of the coin in terms of what does that commercial product look like? But what's the journey been like, partnering with I think some big incumbents, in the launch of leading up to and since the launch? What's the journey been like? How's it been for you and your co-founder?
Yeah, it's definitely been a long journey, and like with both Dan and Andy as the co-founders there, like we started about 3 years ago. And the first 2 years was really none of us had an insurance background. None of us knew how to build an insurance product. So it took a long time to get all of that knowledge and all of that information in place where we were building out models, analyzing the risk profile, and then trying to get carriers to go take that risk. Like
Mhm.
running an insurance company, you need a lot of money in the bank in order to cover your risk. So we'd end up going out and finding a partner. And there was a couple we were far down the road on, but then like with hurricanes, wildfires, they shifted their focus to other areas. But we finally found a great partner in Great American Insurance where they loved the product, had something similar for covering the tax costs to terminations. Um, and they loved the idea, decided to do all the papering for us, and they're taking 100% of the risk for us. So we're functioning as the MGA for the product. So we're doing all the underwriting and claim processing there.
Mm. Yeah, and that's so almost kind of transitioning into that kind of full stack MGA type organization where you're, building the tech, but also you're able to write those lines of from an insurance perspective as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's how we started, was purely with an insurance product. And then as we learned more and more about the HR side of things, we decided to bring in all of that HR offboarding functionality, build out a portal for users to come to post-employment so they can see all their documents there. They can use their benefit, shop for health insurance, roll over your 401k, kind of bring all of your post-employment tasks into one spot.
Hmm. And the HR processes, the kind of tech infrastructure, like how could you kind of explain a little bit more in detail on the specifics of the offboarding platform kicks in, it helps protect employee access to healthcare from an HR and individual perspective, but how does it truly assist in that whole process? What's the kind of USPs for you guys?
Yeah, so we integrate directly with the HRIS system. So you don't have to copy anyone over. You don't have to start processes from scratch. So we just take all that access to your employee data. And as people are exiting, whether it's voluntary or involuntary, you essentially use our system to templatize all of your processes, documents, and severance packages, and then use our system to build out a case for everyone exiting. So if you're doing a large layoff, you can build out a severance package specific to that. and then go generate all of your cases for who's being let go. And it will standardize all of those documents for each person, all the severance package costs. And you'll see that from a high level view, what that impact is financially, as well as who's being impacted.
Right. And you and I had discussed on our initial call about the whole, the option for people right now is Cobra, which I think you really point that out on your website. You have the website's so informative around the current options, the alternatives, and the limitations to Cobra is by and large costs. From my understanding, and I think the other one that jumps out at me is limited eligibility, in terms of limited eligibility, but also duration of how long you can be covered. Like, how does when insurance products serve as a far better alternative in your eyes?
Yeah, so the insurance product is essentially giving the employees optionality. So for the employer, you're currently giving Cobra as part of your severance package, typically. If you're not, your employees still have access to Cobra. So with our insurance product, you're shifting that 2 months of Cobra for the tech layoffs, a lot of them did 6 months, to an insurance product to cover that cost. And we also have a self-funded version where you can just pay out into essentially it's a bucket of money rather than months of coverage, so that you can use that bucket of money on any health insurance plan you choose. So if Cobra is the right option for you, you can stay on Cobra and go use Cobra. But for the most part, you can go find a health insurance option on the exchange or private medical that can be up to half the price of what Cobra is. So if you're given $1,000 of coverage, you might get 2 months on Cobra. You can go find a plan on the exchange, get 3 months. You do short-term medical, you might get 6 months of coverage, which really gives you as the exiting person the choice to go find what's right for you at this point in your life.
And how does when insurance determine the amount that an employee would receive, or how long they would receive it for, or how eligible they are for this?
Yeah, the eligibility is actually left up to the employer. So the employer is able to choose and decide that for their company and what's right for them. So it could be for entry-level employees, you're giving them $1,000 of benefit. Your managers might get $2,500. Your executives, you can give them up to $10,000. So you're able to right size it for your employee base. And because as the employer, you're paying for it, that's how it's set up. And then the employee can buy up from there. So if the employee wants additional coverage from what's being offered, they can add $1,000, $5,000 additional coverage.
Okay. And what powers all of this from, as a CTO that's building it, what's the technology behind this, the platform, the tech stack, the infrastructure, like what is it that you're using to really power this whole platform?
Yeah, a lot of the tech stack's been built from the ground up. So front end is all React based, and then we build on Google Cloud. We incorporate a lot of AI technology in there. So we pull in queries from OpenAI with ChatGPT, as well as Google Vertex, to do analyses on what a user's preferences are, and then go look at all the health insurance policies they're eligible for, and do a quick analysis to find, based on these preferences, what premium you were paying before, what's a good comparable plan for you out in the health insurance marketplace.
Is there any kind of risk of using AI within the kind of HR atmosphere, within this area of information and data, in terms of, I guess, being biased towards some information and how it churns out the data? Is there any kind of danger of that, or is that something you guys have taken into consideration?
Yeah, definitely something we've taken into consideration. So a lot of what we surface that's directly from ChatGPT is more of a contextual analysis. So for example, like on a health insurance plan, it'll give you a list of pros and cons based on your preferences. So if you're looking for something that is low premium, but has dental and vision coverage, it will go in there and show you like, these are the pros that match your preferences. This plan's similar and cheaper, but it doesn't have dental. So it's able to go in and do that level of analysis. And then we're working on making a deeper, more informative decisions there, as well as surfacing additional information around different plan options like network size, ensuring certain pharmaceuticals are on your plan. There's a lot of basic queries out there for that, but having a deeper AI analysis around it and its cost is what we're moving towards.
And who's Jamie?
Jamie is our conversational AI. I believe we call Jamie our healthcare advocate, I believe is the term we settled on.
Okay.
So Jamie's whole purpose is around collecting the information about you to understand what kind of health insurance policy to shop for and your preferences around it. So rather than like the approach of healthcare.gov and a lot of the other sites, because shopping for health insurance is not new, but they use big, long, giant, complicated forms where Jamie asks you a brief set of about 10 questions to collect just enough information to go get those rates for you. And then you're able to go see those plans, and Jamie will continue to ask you additional clarifying questions over time.
Right. And the thing, we all know the kind of power of AI from, content creation to doing a lot of the heavy lifting and just generally being, a fantastic tool to innovate within. But do you just kind of the question I was thinking with, and I think it's great what you've done there because you've really humanized the kind of process there by giving your AI tool a human name, and creating that feel of a human. But we still do see a lot of data that people definitely still prefer that human touch to a process like this. From an insurance perspective, they want to speak to a human. Like, what's your kind of thoughts on that, and where does the human touch come in, I guess, in your process?
Yeah, we're working on bringing it up further in the process, but we do have a 24-hour call center of licensed agents that anyone can call into. They're bilingual, and they can pull in additional language services as well. So you can go talk to a human and they can walk you through the entire process and even enroll you in the right health insurance plan. So if you don't want to use Jamie in the AI side, you can always call in and they'll get you help that way. But we really wanted to use Jamie as that initial, like, very high touch, personalized experience. And as we expand beyond just health insurance shopping, like, Jamie will be built to roll over your 401k, know how to use your HSA, HRA funds, and kind of everything else that you do during your job transition. So it's really trying to make that a personalized, humanized experience at a large scale. But we also have the actual call into our call center, and we will help you figure out what you need to do at this point.
Yeah. What's your kind of just generally your thoughts? What's your thoughts on AI of where we are at the moment? Is it something that you've worked with over a long period of time, or is it something that you yourself have got quite familiar with very quickly?
I mean, I've worked with it here and there, but it's mostly been on the more machine learning side of things, where we didn't call it AI till ChatGPT came out, just because it was actually a interface you communicate with now. So I think it's come a huge way recently. I'm excited to see where it's going to go and how you can pull it into new areas. But I am worried on how some people have been using it as more of a tool to cut losses and try and trim everything from the bottom rather than find new spaces they can go in with it.
And I guess that space of health benefits, that kind of intersection between healthcare benefits, insurance, where do you kind of, what do you think needs to change in terms of, you're solving a very specific problem from the offboarding, but I think that the healthcare system in the US is certainly one that raises a lot of questions naturally. Between that and insurance, what do you think needs to change, and how do you think something like AI is going to take that to the next level? Where do you see it going?
Yeah, I mean, I hope to see it go into more of a personalized experience where you can give additional information. It will know all of the potential pitfalls you're going to run into and ensure that you're covered for all of that. So if you buy a new car, what type of insurance do you need for that? You have a house as well. How do you bundle that into things? Where I don't want to go is purely a play on, like, how do we ensure we avoid risk as an insurance company? but rather how do we appropriately cover this risk? So rather than excluding things, how do we include things in a more healthy, sustainable fashion?
Yeah. And I guess that's the question. How do you ensure that it does include that? Because it's we're training it, and it's trying to ensure that it can include everything. I think it comes back to that bias element of making sure that they're taking everything into account. Yeah.
Yeah, because we definitely don't want to see like more insurance carriers pulling out of entire states because they're bad risk. Like there needs to be a better option on how we can use AI to understand that risk better, plan for that risk better, so that we can keep covering it.
Mm. And then from setting these individuals up, it's almost like a B2B to C tool. From setting individuals up, then when we go through to the claims process as an MGA, is that an easy process for you guys? I mean, how does the claims process work? And claims is something for me that, as I navigate through, I'm like yourself, I'm not from insurance or InsurTech, but it seems like the most obvious space for innovation, but still seeing, I guess, very much a lack of it. There's lots of good stuff happening, but yeah, I'm just always interested on how the claims process works.
Yeah, that's one we've specifically chosen to keep in-house. So rather than using like off-the-shelf technology for it, we wanted to build the technology around that. So we use a lot of AI to, like for our claims process, you upload proof of paying for an insurance plan. So proof of premium payment. And then we just need to make sure you did pay that, and then we can reimburse you for that amount. So it's all AI driven. So you upload a PDF document or a picture of a receipt or proof of payment from the insurance carrier. And we have AI go through that, pull out all the wording, find the date of payment, how much you paid, who you got insurance through, what type of plan it is. So when we adjudicate a claim, it's just on a screen. All the fields are pre-filled with that information. And our adjudicators just go confirm that that is the right information on the receipt. At some point, that'll just be auto-checked, and we won't really have adjudicators checking every claim. But it's a really streamlined process that takes a matter of a minute, maybe two per claim.
Wow. And then presumably you have to get the money back from, I don't know, the carrier or it just seems like a very seamless process from a claims, because filing for a claim and then actually getting paid out typically doesn't take that quickly.
Yeah, like, no one wants that to take weeks, especially like we have a very time sensitive spot because these are people that you're no longer employed. You don't have an income. Every dollar you hand out, especially for health insurance premiums, it's not cheap. So getting that money back to each individual very quickly is one of our priorities.
And what's the role of an InsurTech within this huge problem area? Like, how important do you see the role of an InsurTech to change everything that you're changing and more, I guess, within just the insurance space? Like, is it, and I guess probably taking it back as well, like someone that's new to insurance and InsurTech generally, like what's your kind of thoughts on the whole space at the moment? Like, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely an interesting space, and the benefit is insurance is a huge thing and moves very slow, which we found out while we're trying to get our product papered by a carrier. So having that technology aspect where you are building technology that moves very quickly to cover some aspect of insurance kind of keeps the big carriers and big players out of that space because they can't iterate that fast. Similarly, on the tech side, anyone could build a technology solution, but having that insurance backing, the licensing, and the products around insurance kind of keeps these standard tech players away from that. So it's a good way to like have a moat around your business model where you need both sides, technology and insurance, for this product to succeed. Because just technology around offboarding doesn't do anything if people can't shop for health insurance and get all that information.
And is that as an engineering leader, as a software engineer that's used to shipping things out daily, just really getting shit done, like quickly and effectively, then you're doing your bit, but then sometimes the challenge is on the other side. Like, How has that transition been for you?
Yeah, definitely been a challenge, especially with the speed of insurance companies. So we originally expected to be in market 2 years ago, but with the speed and how long it took to get a insurance product built, papered, analyzed, approved by a carrier, it took us an extra year to get to that point. So we didn't start building technology till about a year ago now. So all the systems have been built within the last year, just as a factor of it took that long to get the insurance side figured out.
Yeah. And what's the dynamic of the when team? Like who's figuring those problems out? Is it really that combination of both insurance and tech, or what's the kind of dynamic of it?
Yeah, given we're a very small team and none of us had the insurance background, Dan actually was the one that took on getting fully licensed. So he did all the A&H licensing, all the PNC licensing, E&S lines. So he went out and just sat there taking tests for months, trying to get all of that in order for our company. So it's definitely a big lift and had to kind of divide and conquer there, where I could start focusing on the technology. He can make sure that we're building everything in a compliant way for all the licenses, and then kind of making sure we communicate well, talk all the time, and ensure everything's moving forward in tandem.
And is it something, maybe looking back on, would you think an insurance person, a subject matter expert, would have been very advantageous, or is that something that you think as we scale, that's a part of the business that will start to flesh out in terms of insurance-led experience?
Yeah, we've all agreed if we had that insurance expert at the beginning and they told us this was a 2-3 year process, our company would not have existed. So the only reason this exists is because we didn't know it was going to be that big of a lift. And as entrepreneurs, we're like, well, like, let's just go figure it out. Whereas an insurance person probably would have been like, oh, this probably isn't worth figuring out. Like, this is 2-3 years of effort to even start selling.
So being blissfully unaware was the reason why you guys are still here.
Yep.
Love it.
Gone well so far, but definitely a lot longer than any of us anticipated.
Yeah. And what's next for you guys? Like, what's now that you're fully live with both products? You're raised some funding. We announced it. We saw it. An exciting time. Like, what's kind of next for you as a CTO and in the business?
Yeah, a lot of it's going to be flushing out additional technology on the tool set. So making sure HR has tools around, especially legal and compliance. As teams have gone more and more remote, a lot of HR teams have had things fall through the cracks where you might have an employee in a different state you've never worked in, and you don't really know, like, what is the rules and regulations around the final paycheck? How do you pay out your PTO? So you can go pay someone to do that. And our goal is to bring that into our system. So anytime you create a case, you know the exact regulations in that state based on that person's age, how long they've been with your company. So you know exactly what you need to do to pay them out in the right legal compliant way.
And you always kind of see when being within that HR kind of healthcare domain, like you don't see yourself venturing out into other lines or other areas of insurance.
For other areas of insurance, we do plan to bring in like a actual one medical plan. So finding a good, cost-effective, essentially gap insurance plan that is full medical, so that people have a high quality option for a low price point to get them through to their next job. A lot of like the ACA plans, they're not designed around that. Congress is talking through how to deal with short-term medical. So having a third option there where it is major medical, but designed as a shorter term solution to get you to that next job.
Yeah, interesting. And kind of finishing on a kind of cultural piece, as you kind of touched on, the team is lean, seems like a very small but mighty team. How do you define the culture? What is the culture that you're trying to that you have built so far and look to continue to build it when?
Yeah. I mean, actually with a small team, it's going to change and fluctuate quite a bit every time we bring a new person on. But our overall goal is to make sure that we are focused on being a compassionate company. Like we are dealing with people during some of the hardest moments in their life where you might be losing your job, they might be sick at the same time. So they're not in a great mental state. They're usually upset at their former employer. So we're trying to make sure we bring compassion to them, the tools they need, and the resources they need.
Yeah. Yeah. And from an engineering perspective, do you always intend to keep, I guess, engineering lean? Because it's something that I see a lot at the moment, with low, no code, with AI, we see a lot of engineering teams probably always staying around that 5, 6, 7, 8 number. Like, do you feel like AI can not just be used for your products to market, but also be used internally for engineering, or do you kind of see yourself fleshing that out as you grow?
Yeah, it'll get fleshed out a bit as we grow, but it'll probably be a more lean team. Given we're a new company, it's fresh technology and built modernly. There's not a lot of old technical debt, and I've used ChatGPT day to day and Copilot to build out interfaces and generate parts of the site just purely through that. So I want to make sure we keep a team that is smart and using every tool to our advantage. And generative AI is definitely a big one there.
Yeah, yeah. Well, look, I mean, I'm conscious of your time, Patrick. It always goes by very quickly. But before I let you go, I just wanted to hit you with a quick fire round, which I did give you the heads up on. And I just wanted to ask you three questions. First of all, your kind of at the moment your favorite, or maybe historically your favorite tech gadget or tool, as a technologist.
The one I still wish I had in my apartment here would be a 3D printer.
Oh, you already had one of them.
Uh, I I enjoy that as a fun way to go dabble on something different.
And I'm sure you'll have a good few of these, but I'm just looking for something that, in terms of like a book or a podcast, that you would recommend to tech enthusiasts, because I don't think there's enough of them, to be honest. Like, it's something that I look for daily, in terms of that kind of inspiration or motivation.
Yeah, don't know a lot of tech ones because I'm not a huge podcast person. But from a leadership perspective, the Leadership and Loyalty podcast.
Yeah,
Yeah,
nice.
I try and listen to at least one of those a week, but that's about all I do podcast wise.
The leadership and loyalty.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's with
Okay.
Dolph Baron.
Okay. Let me give that a listen. And finally, what's the best piece of advice that you think you've been given, or like a favorite quote that you kind of live by?
Um, I'll go with advice more than a quote, just because I don't memorize quotes all that often. Um, but just the overall concept of failing fast and being okay to fail at things.
Yeah.
I've never lived a perfect life, so knowing
Mm.
that everything you do, there's a good chance you're going to fail at it, but that's fine. So like learn from it, move on, keep going, because nothing in life's been perfect so far. So why should that ever change?
Yeah. Love that. Great way to end. Patrick, thanks for coming on. I know you're a busy man, so really appreciate your time. And yeah, enjoy the rest of your day.
Great. Thanks for having me. Have a good one.